Welcome back, people. Thank you so much. My name is Lamar Parker, financial professional. Today's session, we'll be talking about mindfulness and money. We'll be talking about strategies on how to deal with the emotions of making money decisions. And I'm here to help in how we navigate that system and how we get to our goals, to whatever our value system is.
Yes, and my name is Nancy Andino. I am a clinical social worker, and I am here to provide emotional guidance, right? The mindfulness aspect of it, the human experience, and to challenge Mr. Lamar Parker and some of the strategies that he brings up, and then how we end up still meeting on the same road. And thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to this process and this workshop. Wrote about this topic was during sessions with clients and conversations with friends and colleagues, the lack of awareness as it relates to people's relationship with money or just money, how they spend money. A lot of it was very impulsive, right?
Hmm.
Impulsive decisions being made, impulsive buying based on their emotions that will be experienced not so much as in logic. So that's what brought this about, and being able to do exercises and experiments with clients during therapy sessions for them to apply this in their real lives. You actually begin to see a shift in their beliefs and how they value money, along with how they spend money. And then we start with the challenges of old habits that they have, wanting to come and start spending again in a manner that will not be benefiting for their goals. But in that challenging the new experience of one and the new knowledge of trying to be more responsible and not be so impulsive. So that's what kind of brought this about, and that's something that Lamar and I discuss. Mindfulness, right? Mindfulness means observing what you are experiencing and being aware of your presence, noticing your thoughts, and recognizing what is affecting you. One of the things that is very important when it comes to mindfulness, it allows you to gain clarity about what you are experiencing, how it gains you allows you to gain awareness of how you are present, sensations, emotions, memories, and this begins to impact your financial goals and your strategies, whether they're present or if they're absent. And one thing that happens when people become mindful, it does begin to bring up other discomforts that at times people start to avoid, and that begins to impact their continuation of practicing being mindful of behaviors. The same way it impacts their emotions, it impacts their behaviors, it impacts their their relationship with money and goals and the strategies that they utilize. When people become more mindful of their behaviors, we start bringing in judgments, feelings of guilt, shame, disappointment, or if I would have done this, or if I would have had made this decision, then. So it's very important to be compassionate with oneself and be patient with the process of this, along with forgiving and trusting your ability to be able to create change. So not only do you become more aware of the emotions you are experiencing, you also become aware of the emotional and physical toll that it takes in your system and that it takes in your life when pursuing certain financial goals, and noticing that the behaviors that you have are not aligned with your ability to meet those goals. It aids you in recognizing strategies that can grant you success with achieving those goals, but then it can also bring about a sense of feeling frozen, right? And not being able to take action because of what's happened in the past. So the behaviors that need to be changed, if we don't have an understanding of them or how they impact every aspect of our decision making, then it can guide us down the wrong path as it relates to financial goals and money strategies. What are your thoughts about that, Lamar? What is your feedback on that?
So yeah, just going back to what you were saying, like the emotional part of it, anytime we get into the money is an emotional topic, right? And whether you're spending, saving, growing, building, anytime you are making a money decision, there's always, although there shouldn't be the smart people with money, is mo emotions are taken out of it. But majority of people deal with money on an emotional level because um, not everyone was handed the silver spoon or grew up with a silver spoon. And, when you're growing up, money, most people, money decisions change lives or change the trajectory or something, or have a immediate impact on what you're doing in that day, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
never, rarely is it, it's just money, right? Although we watch video and TV and every social media, they pretend like it's just money, but we all know when you're in your room and you're with family or you're in the dark and it's only you and your thoughts, money becomes very emotional in our decision making.
Mm-hmm.
And, we have to be mindful of how we approach not only the money part, but how we approach it internally.
Mm-hmm.
To be very thoughtful about not letting the money part affect us emotionally.
And even when people are born with a silver spoon, it doesn't mean that they are mindful as to how money works. A lot of times they may not, and they end up just um but it's splurging and actually becoming broke, right?
Right.
Because they don't have the emotional maturity. So you
Mm-hmm.
share regarding being smart about money. And for me, that translated in my head of having emotional maturity as it
Mm-hmm.
relates to money and just finances in general and how we go about making decisions. And the emotional maturity and emotional flexibility needed requires mindfulness in order to have success with that. And
Right.
I don't think that conversation is taking place often enough where or a place that allows people to learn how to process that, learn how to experience the discomfort that comes with it, learn how to cope with that discomfort in order to be able to make better decisions as it relates to their financial goals and their financial strategies.
Right. Right. And ideally, there shouldn't be any discomfort, right? It should
Yeah.
be it should be what's the goal? What's the ideal decision to get towards the goal? And that's really shouldn't be an emotional, but we know that, you know, there's to me, money is a three-dimensional objective.
Mm-hmm.
You have the emotional part of it, you have the physical part of it, and then you have a which it's an internal separate from the emotions. There's a mental part of it that people overlook, right? Because yeah, emotionally, money may make you feel happy or it may make you feel sad. Physically, you may be able to buy something new, right? And put it on and show it off to people. But there's a mental aspect of it that ties into both the emotional and the physical that we often negate or, ignore. So it's just important that we check in with all three and be able to have barriers between each one and
Yeah.
be able to make decisions based on not my emotional decision, not what other people think physically about what I'm doing, but really thoughtfully, what's the best decision for me now at this point in life as of where I am.
Yeah, yeah. Right, which kind of brings us into money goals, right? And the
Mhm.
decision making that takes place. Are we making those decisions based on set goals, or are we making those decisions based on emotion and
Mhm.
what and beliefs as to, well, I feel and I believe this versus, well, I actually know and what are the facts? So what do you define as this? Like, when we talk about money goals, what comes up for you?
So I was I have my son has an account, and we were doing something yesterday which reminded me of this. When we talk about money goals, right? Even when I talk to him about it, I go through my three-dimensional thought process, right? What's your goal? Right? Even if he wants to buy a video game, all right, what's your goal? I want to buy a video game. All right, so then I ask him why. What is it? What are you going to get out of it? Right? Is it a feeling you're going to get out of it? Or you just want to enjoy the video game, just physically, playing it, whatever have you, right? And then I always ask him, you have a goal for a video game, but you also have a financial goal of how much money you want to save. Is this going to help your goal, right? Is this going to get you to where you want to be? Um, because we talk about budget planning with him, right? Am I spending because I need something, or am I spending because I want something, right? And then whatever is a need or a want, does it fit into your overall goal of, all right, you have a goal of $100 that you want to save at the end of the year? Is that need or want going to affect your ultimate goal?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's how, when I deal with my clients, whatever it is, financial planning, home purchasing, right? You have your need, you have your want, but there's always an ultimate goal that we need to be aware of. We have our day-to-day stuff, but we can't get unfocused on where we want to go long term.
So what I'm hearing when you say that is you're teaching him how to not fear talking about money,
Right.
right? To not experience anxieties when come talking about money because we are already creating this a maturity level for him and understanding of what money is and what money goals can look like and how to differentiate, make those decisions from there. But then you're also changing the personal and familial aspect and expectations of it. So you are
Hmm.
providing him with a belief system that he can create on his own, but you're also molding and providing him some good education on which can allow him to be successful with achieving his goals, depending on which way he chooses to go.
Yeah. Yes.
Right? And a lot of the money goals are impacted by our family lineage, are
Hmm.
impacted by our societal norms, right? Impacted by the government. And
Hmm.
all
Hmm.
of these will directly impact the whole person where if they're not very clear on what they are experiencing as a whole person, because I'm always going to bring it back to, our wellness and our mental health. If they're not clear how it's impacting, if they're not able to make a decision based on first me and what I'm noticing and the self-care and everything that comes with that. And then, okay, this is my understanding of money. This is my understanding of how to set this goal that can allow me to be successful with
Right.
this, right? Because it also impacts your ability to create these goals, whether it is with what you learned through your family lineage or what you have learned with your own personal curiosities
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
learning, right? So then,
And
uh-huh.
no, no, I was gonna say, even if, we're talking about money, but even if you take money out of it and we talk about cultural and family backgrounds, that's where we get our value system. What do we place value on?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, that's what a money goal is. You're placing value on that goal.
Mm-hmm.
Money is just, plug and place another topic. But
Yes.
at the core of it is, all right, where's your value system? How did you create that value system? And who gave you the beginnings of that value system as opposed to where that comes from? And if
Yes.
we can get to the root of it, right? The money is just a distraction to what, it's just something there. But we're really when we talk about goals and success and what's value, what's success, we're really talking about that value system that was created as a child.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. And it also defines a person's ability to be financially successful,
Mhm. Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But which gives us into the success and goals, right? The definition of success varies based on your cultural, familial, and societal norms.
Right.
And then if the person decides to step out of that, and that's when we start getting the outliers because they've chosen to look at things a little bit different, or they've had the ability to look at things a little bit different, which can give them success. But the reality comes is, what does success look and feel like for the
Mhm.
individual, and is it realistic? Because I've
Mhm.
been told, people like, well, I know I am successful when I have a multi-million-dollar company, and I have the nice car, and I have the big house and all that stuff. But for me, I am successful when I am doing something, thank goodness that what I do, I also enjoy, allows
Right.
me to live comfortably, still be able to do things that are realistic for my life and how I want my life to be without
Right.
breaking my back.
Right.
Right. So for me, success looks and feels like comfort,
Okay.
um, mental just relief, feeling comfortable with
Okay.
myself, right?
Okay.
Being able to trust myself and my decision making, being able to enjoy life, being able to not become overwhelmed physically and emotionally because of money, or because of not having enough money, because it's
Right.
what's considered to be enough. Right?
Okay.
People, I'll have clients ask, well, what does success look like? When I have $1 million in my bank, okay, what do you feel that's going to, what do you think or imagine is going to happen to your life when you have that? What's the reality of it? And they really don't have a plan for it. They're just like, that's just it. That's what success looks like, but there's no additional
It's not
plan.
right.
There's nothing around it.
I mean, usually there is no plan. There's just a system without plan,
Hmm.
right? There's just there's a goal without a plan.
Yes. Yeah.
They just see whatever again their value system was created as a child, that's what they have stuck in their head. And then there's no ABC, how do I get there? And
Hmm.
that's where the disconnect becomes when you're talking about. So it's like it's almost akin to uh we have a trip. We're going on a trip. We want to go to California. Well, what does the GPS say? We don't have a GPS.
Hmm.
We're just in a car. We don't know where we're gonna rest at. We don't know if there's an accident. How do we pivot and go somewhere else? And that's where the anxiety comes from, because I know I have a long trip across the other side of the country. I don't know how I'm going to get there. And if there's a incident that causes me to have to pivot, I don't know where I'm going to pivot.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that's where our anxiety and our emotions become stressful for us with money, with most things, but just being on a topic with money, that's where we run into issues at. And the problem is it's a cycle,
Yeah.
right? We never figure out how to address the fact that I need a plan to get where I need to be.
Yeah.
And I need alternative actions. Even though I have a plan, as we discussed in our last session, I need to be flexible in that plan to still make sure that I achieve the ultimate goal of whatever that value goal is. I need to be flexible within my plan to make sure that I'm staying focused on the plan and the
Yeah.
value.
And one of the things we have discussed is the generational aspect of it, and how that shows up in somebody's ability to achieve these goals, right? Does it look like staying financially poor to receive benefits to keep up and maintain? Right. And I think that was something that you and I were going back and forth with, because people may view success as the glitz and glam, like we had discussed earlier, or like the comfort and just being, which I shared, but it's also, it can literally be, I just need to survive. And in order for me to survive, like my family has been surviving through the year, is I need to be able to keep my money up to
Hmm.
this level, Because if I'm able to keep my money at this level, at least in like major cities, but let's talk about New York City, if I
Right.
am making less than this amount, it allows me to have access to healthcare. It allows me to have access to public housing, affordable housing. It allows me to have access to SNAP, right? To be able to eat because it's so expensive, right?
Mm-hmm.
It allows me to just maintain that. And that is
Right.
just enough for me, right? But then we have other people that is like, okay, they're working, overworking to not have to qualify for those programs that are set up for lower income. But then it's a lot of this taking place because
Right.
there's a lot of anxiety and depression that will show up with that, along with every other hardship. Then you
Mm-hmm.
have the people like, having a job that pays you enough to live and feel comfortable. That can also be goal setting. Having a
Right.
job that provides you with all the luxuries and things you desire while living comfortably.
Mm-hmm.
You understand that that does not equate to joy and mental and emotional comfort.
Right.
And then like having a job that allows all the luxuries and things you desire, along with living comfortably and not straining your central nervous system.
Yes.
And
Yes.
what does that look like? And what is that being influenced by?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's like the strategies and goals that are being passed down to us through the generations are directly impacted by what they experienced.
Right.
And a lot of times when we think about, the generational Section 8, the generational, families that live in the
Yeah.
projects
Yeah. Yeah.
for
Yeah.
40, 50, 60 years, and it's like frowned upon without really understanding what there is a
Mhm.
aspect, there's a reasoning behind that they've learned how to survive for that. And we may be expecting them to look this way versus, well, that's what it looks here. And
Right.
how do we digest that
Yeah.
without
Absolutely.
judgment and with more compassion?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I was just thinking when you said strategy, and I was like, is that really a strategy? But I mean, it is for some people. It is a strategy.
It is.
However limited it is, there is a strategy to, have a child and get on Section 8. Go down to the office. Like people have planned strategies of how to do that stuff. There is a strategy of, I want to have this amount of money to buy these shoes and this car and still live, in my parents' basement. However limited it is, it's still a strategy. And as professionals, often I'm sure on your end, definitely on me on my end, I have to kind of restructure that strategy and kind of have to help them realize that, okay, not necessarily put that strategy down, but just kind of give options to see other strategies that may be more beneficial to them long term rather than the short term emotional satisfaction.
So that even when we say a limited strategy,
Hmm.
we are judging,
Yes.
right? We're judging, and we're seeing it from a space of this is what it's supposed to look like,
Hmm.
right? So since this is what it's supposed to look like, you're limiting. That is a very not enough thought process because we live in a capitalist society where
Right.
nothing is ever enough,
Right.
right? Where it can be, this is the strategy that I've been having. Well, on my end, it's like, is it working for you? Right? Is it working for you? It's working for me fine. Like, okay, so how come your anxiety levels are here? Or how come we're experiencing this depression? Do we need to expand on this goal and strategy? Or, where does that stem from? Or what traumas have you experienced in the past, right? I'd like to get in, as a therapist, we get into the nitty gritty of it. And then it's
Right.
like, well, this is why we're here. Okay, is it working for you? Yes, or it really isn't. Okay, are you willing and open to just explore and get curious and expand a little bit?
Hmm. Hmm.
So I'm not going at it with like, this is a limited strategy. I am going with, this is a strategy that has worked for this individual. And somehow they made it here. It's shown up in our therapy sessions. That means we're going to explore it because it's no longer working for them now.
Right.
Does that make sense?
No, that for what you're looking to do totally makes sense.
Yeah.
On my end, numbers are black and white,
Yes.
right? So I gotta be, I have to be like, yeah, this is what you need to save, or this is how much you need to buy the home, or this is how much based on the home that you want, this is how much the monthly payment is gonna be.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, based on what you're doing now, you're not gonna get there. This is
Yeah.
how we have to adjust to get to where you want to be. And that's where, when we talk about the goals, that's where your strategy helps them long term, but then my application of what needs to be done is a short term, quick. And if we can't do this, then we have to move on and get a smaller house or, now with the financial planning part of it, that can be, I can be a little bit more flexible in that.
Yes.
But when you're
Yeah.
talking about house buying, there's no flexibility, and that's how and that's what I deal with in working with people, and just being honest because I have to be honest with them. I can't be, you know, not that I can be dishonest, but I have to give them the raw truth as opposed to selling them a dream that I know is not possible.
Yes. So that's where on my end is it is long term that can assist them in your short term planning. Right.
Right.
So in my on my camp is let me get you ready for whatever it is. And then you can go and be able to execute the short-term plans that you're trying to get them to. Because if they are not aware,
Right.
if their relationship with money, you can have all the short-term goals you want, but if their relationship is shot as it relates to money, it relates to finances, experiences, trauma, all that stuff, they're not going to be able to achieve that. And if they
Yes.
achieve it, they're not going to be able to maintain it.
Paint it. Yes. Absolutely.
Right? So it becomes with, I'm gonna dig deep. And then once you're here, we're a little bit more aligned. You're completely aware about, okay, this is what I experienced, this is what it looks like, blah, blah, blah. I am now ready to start taking some action steps. It's literally starting with, I just want you to open up a high yield savings account.
Mhm.
And even that can sometimes become very anxiety provoking for clients.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
then like, okay,
Absolutely.
but if you do that, document what that experience is like for you, and then we can come back and talk about it. But I need you to do that because that's aligned with the goal you said you want to meet. And then
Hmm.
that even becomes a whole other that begins to grow tentacles like, well, my family, and then what it's supposed to look like and what I've
Right.
been told. And I am the first of my family to be able to do this. So it has to be a particular way.
Right. I mean, you may or may not, you'd be surprised at how many people I run across that don't trust banks, that don't trust
Absolutely. And I'm one of them.
or that don't trust stocks
Yeah.
but they fully want to grow their money by working and not by allowing the system of investment,
Hmm.
growth, and compound interest to work for
Yeah.
them as
Yeah.
opposed to them working for their money.
Yes.
And and all of that is based on and it's usually a cultural thing.
Yes.
Is
Yes.
is is very rarely like some individual whose family is okay with it, but they're not okay with it.
Yeah.
It's usually some distrust that's passed on generationally, and now they're here and fully want to be wealthy people
With money
that
under their
work
mattress.
for yes, with money underneath the mattress that work for their money, but can't understand how come their money is not growing fast
Yes.
enough.
Yes. Yeah. And that in itself, it stems from fear, right? And it can also stem from some traumatic experience. It also stems from what people have experienced in our lifetime of losing everything.
Right.
And now we're asking them to trust the system that took everything away from them. Right. So there is it is a whole experience that the person has to overcome. And
Hmm.
that is including the people, we have 20-year-olds. They've experienced their parents losing everything.
Right.
right? So we want them to trust the system that has failed them before. How do we help them trust the system in a manner that can help them? And I say failed them before, where people have lost entire retirement accounts. People have lost their homes because they lost their job, right? Because of this, people may, sometimes people don't understand, if you don't have enough money in the bank starts charging you, right?
Right.
So it is the nitty gritty of it, but the system has at some point failed them. And if how do you help somebody overcome that? You're straining your face. Yes, it has failed them if you've lost everything.
Okay, I'm gonna push back on that.
Yes.
And yes, there are instances where the quote unquote system has failed people,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right?
Well, instances of it has actually failed people.
Right, that have actually failed people. But there
Mm-hmm.
are some cases where people have failed themselves by not being proactive and aware and educated
Yes.
on what's going on. And
Yes.
to me, to me, that's usually the case more often than there are some rare instances, stock market crash. We just had a total global meltdown in 2020. So every couple years there's a absolute world catastrophe that affects people in a dramatic way that can ruin people.
Yes.
But to me, there are some key instances where people don't help themselves, or at least at minimum, don't protect themselves financially to be able to withstand those rare occasions where the market may crash or we have a pandemic. Like that if you look through history, that happens every 10 years or whatever it is. So it's
Yeah.
not like every year there's a system crash where people are being forced to, eat cat food.
So you say it from a financial sense, and I'll say it from a humanistic sense.
Hmm.
You are correct in that, but if a person does not know how to ask the right questions in order to get the answers and the guidance that's needed, the system has failed,
Right.
right? When we have a public education system that doesn't really teach about this, the system has failed, right?
Hmm.
When we
Hmm.
have where money is still a taboo, although we are in a capitalist society, the system has failed the person. The system is working, right? But it has failed the individuals. We are making the assumption that the person will have a baseline of understanding.
Right.
The majority of Americans don't,
Right.
right? So that's what I mean by that,
Okay.
because there will need to be an understanding in order to know how the system works. And in order to be able to get that, when we are in a society that only shows you, oh yes, my family came to this country with $1 and now we're multimillionaires. No one's really telling you the step by step in between
Right.
is failing, right? Because
Right.
that's what's being fed. So that's what I mean by that. It has happened, and how do we build? Because we're still humans. Money is
Hmm.
something
Hmm.
that we have given it value. But at the end of the day, we're still human, and humans, the first thing we do is feel, and then
Right.
act. It's just impulsivity gets in the way of being able to make the decisions that will be helpful for us in meeting certain goals.
Right. And I think that is why we're doing this. And you hit it on the nail on the head when you say the first thing they do is feel,
Mm-hmm.
right? And feeling, although important, specifically with money, it should not be the first thing you do. It
Because you're
really should
human.
be. Yeah,
So
I
how do
mean,
you
yeah,
bypass that?
right, right. But the mindfulness, the thought process should be
Yes.
the first thing,
No,
right?
no.
And
Feeling is first. The mindfulness allows the person to understand, I felt this. It does not mean I have to react that way. The mindfulness comes in, I feel this. I'm noticing I'm feeling this. Now I can respond versus react. It doesn't go, I'm going to think first and feel first, because we're human. That doesn't work that way. I feel first. And then when we bring it in mindfulness, since
uh-huh.
I felt that because of blah, 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 blah. Now I get to create something. Now I get to make a decision. So there has to be a pause with that. And the pause comes in, I'm noticing what I felt. And now I get to make a decision, and hopefully it is a informed decision
Uh-huh.
because I've taken the pause to be more curious and to ask more questions.
So this is where we split because here's why. This goes back to my thought on we have a goal, we have a GPS to get us to that goal, right?
Hmm?
If we now you're right in that most people are in the midst, they're in the midst of the middle of the GPS without a direction of where they're going. They've already left home on their way to California. They didn't know where they were going, how to get there. Now they're in Texas somewhere and don't know where they're at and where they're going. What I'm saying is, yes, if we're in a state where we have to feel first and then react, or absolutely we have to be mindful.
It's
At a-
science.
yes, at the moment that we are mindful that, oh, this is not correct. At the moment that we're in the middle of Texas in some far out place and we don't know which way is which way, it is at that point we need to recalibrate our brains. We need to now go, all right, moving forward, I know that this is going to cause some anxiety. So I need to have a plan going forward. And I need to now reach out and kind of educate myself on how to not, not that's not, and that's not going to say you're never going to be in a place where the system has failed you or the system has depleted some of your assets. But if you plan properly, and if you seek the right information from the right people, you can at least put a smaller dent in what the assets that have been depleted that will protect you moving forward.
So we're
What,
on the same road.
yes, we're
But
on the same road.
it still requires, in order to get to that, it still requires this,
Right.
right? Because we're still a human managing this. Right. And then is the mindfulness is how do I, because one of the things is finding the right people. How does a person find the right person if they're first not able to manage this? So in order to be able to be clear as to, okay, these are the questions that I can ask, this is this. If there's no self-regulation, then we got nothing, even with an action plan.
Yes, yes, you have to be self-regulated. Yes, you're right at that. You
Yeah.
even when because even if you give some, I've given people an exact plan, but their emotional immaturity hasn't allowed them to
Yes.
follow through on that plan, which
Yes.
you used earlier, you talked about emotional immaturity. So you're
Yes.
absolutely right in that.
So
Like there
this
has
is
to
all,
be.
we are aligned. It's steps that I am a few steps prior to them actually getting to that because
Hmm.
we're human and this is just what it is,
Right.
right? And in order to develop, and then we go into like, in order to develop effective money strategies, you need consistency,
Hmm.
you need
Hmm.
discipline, understanding, and then be able to take the action. You are in that understanding and action.
Right.
Right? And in order for them to be able to do that, they need to have some consistency and discipline. And
Yes, absolutely
that
correct.
requires a level of emotional maturity, emotional flexibility, emotional stamina, mental stamina, all of that in order to be able to get to that. These are all the steps. And then I want you to be able to document as you're listening to us discuss what is the experience that you're having, right? What can these look and feel like as it relates to mindfulness and your money strategies? How can they get impacted by the career choices, passion
Hmm.
versus money,
Right.
right? Because we're constantly in a place like, go after your passion and your hobbies, but the bills still got to get paid.
Right.
So how do we create a balance between this is what I am passionate about, but my passion is not paying the bills? So this is the
Hmm.
job I have, and it's my job having my brain oozing out of my ears. Like, what do I
Absolutely.
do in that moment? Right? How does that impact the strategies that I need in order to achieve whatever financial goals? Right. And then it comes into my emotions, my beliefs, avoidance. Avoidance is very big.
Hmm.
Avoiding that, looking at that bank account figure, that number that is very black and white,
Yeah.
right?
Or
Because
the
it's going
bills
to
that pile up.
what I'm sorry.
The pile of bills that's sitting on your table that are over.
Yes, right? That directly impacts your beliefs,
Mm-hmm.
right? It directly impacts your expectations. And we're definitely avoiding being vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because vulnerability is the not knowing. Like, I'm not sure how this is going to go. When we
Right.
don't have the maturity, we don't have the flexibility, then it's just it's our the expectations, beliefs, and ability to have these strategies and goals completely gets derailed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
Um, Identification of emotions, beliefs, and expectations. Are we here to survive, to pay bills and work and have or have financial abundance, or creating generational wealth, where we discussed that during our last
Mm-hmm.
presentation, right? So with this is the exercise that I asked is notice what image comes up for you. Notice the feelings that come up. No, now as you notice that, identify what your reality is.
Right.
Right? So I just got to pay the bills and do this. And then, well, what is the experience? What are you noticing? What's coming up for you? I cannot be like my mom. I cannot be like my dad. I cannot
Mm-hmm.
be like my grandparent. I cannot be like so and so because of what they experience. And that's the image just coming up.
Right.
And as that image is coming up, what are the feelings like? It feels icky. My stomach aches. My throat aches. My shoulders. All this other stuff is happening,
Mm-hmm.
right? That has me spiraling. What's the reality? I am spiraling and I'm not able to think clearly, or sometimes differentiate between the reality and what I'm feeling, because there is,
Right.
feelings are not fact,
Right.
right?
Feel
So I think this is something very important for people to do as exercises for them. Well,
Mm-hmm.
what can financial goals look like in real life, your real life scenarios? Where did the financial goals come from? Which is
Yeah.
something that we tend to focus on what they want to become without
Mm-hmm.
really knowing, the struggles that will come for it, or defining what is that's going to show up, right?
Yeah.
Which leads into anxiety and making it very difficult to set clear goals and have realistic expectations, right? I want you to identify what influences the success of your financial goals and strategies, from minimum wage to culture, your skin color, racism, everything impacts that.
Yep.
What is your feedback? What are your thoughts on that?
So I was just thinking, you just made me think like me and my dad have two different views on money. He is very, he can be well off and think he can go broke in the next day. And
Mm-hmm.
I know where that comes from because I know, he grew up very poor. He grew up, sharing shoes and clothes with his brothers and sisters and, not being able to eat or sharing a can of beans or whatever have you.
Yeah.
And just, and my perspective is totally different. I didn't grow up with that type of struggle. And so our relationship with money is different. So when we talk about how money moves and, we have total polar opposites about it. And I find myself getting frustrated with him, but at the same time, knowing where he comes from, I always have to remind myself to give him grace because I know it's not anything that he can control. That's what he saw. That's his brain. That's the way his brain processes money. And I have to be mindful of that and not be in conflict with what he's doing and be like, all right, you know, that's fine. Maybe we should think about doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And this, which leads us into the next steps. All right. And the next steps is I want you to be able to some of the exercises and the questions, you write them down and you follow up on them and revisit them every couple of months to see where you're feeling, what have you done to try to create some action, right? Has it changed? Have you learned anything new? Um, and these next steps is you document what you become mindful of in relation to your relationship with money, financial strategies, and the emotions connected to it, right? Notice your beliefs and emotions about money, then document your financial goals and strategies based on the reality of your situation, not based on your emotions.
Mhm.
Identify realistic action steps to take. Set a start date based on realistic goals and strategy, not on feelings, sensations, and the what ifs.
Right.
Do you feel like those next steps can help somebody be able to get to you into the action?
I do. And I wonder, and I just had a thought of to add to this next step part, which is important, identify what you value.
Uh-huh.
Mine, money minus, what do you value? Because that'll help in getting you back to the place where you're not so much emotionally tied to it, but you have a clear understanding of where you come from and how'd you get here. You
Yeah.
know, and I like I said with my dad, I have to remind myself we have two different spectrums of money, but we have the same values, and we want to be able to take care of family. We want to be able to be a support and a providing system, and we want to help the next generation grow.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with money,
No.
right? That's where our value system is. That's what we hold as important, common personal values.
Yes.
And if we can kind of figure that out, that'll help us get to all the other stuff with money, financial strategies, emotions connected. Because once we find our value, we'll go, well, why do I value that? Where did that come from?
Yes. And that's what we want.
Yes.
We
Yeah.
want that question.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Where does that come from? What created that? Right? Why are we doing this? And how come I'm still doing that now when the world has changed so much?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, following up on the next steps, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you at the next one.